Hard to believe, but it's February 2026, Black History Month.
Hard to believe? Have you seen the weather out there?
Foggy
it's
today.
Very easy to believe, yes. But yeah, the year's flying by, and we're flying you with us here on commUNITY.
Welcome to commUNITY. I'm Claudine Ewing.
And I'm Pete Gallivan.
And we have with us Renata Tony from Visit Buffalo. And we are talking about something really special and different.
Yes.
Family reunions.
It is one of the most powerful economic drivers in Black culture right now. And what's really interesting about it, I think, is that its roots. Where does it come from? And I was really just blown away to find in my research that it dates back to post-emancipation, when enslaved people who were just freed wanted to find their families that they had been separated from. Potentially they had been moved to other plantations, sold, etc., and they wanted to reunite and reconnect. So they started looking for them, and every year from that day, they started getting together every year. And we still honor that same tradition right now, hundreds and hundreds of years later. It is really the backbone of African American travel right now. And I mean, in terms of how it's done annually, it is a loyal following that people can depend on every single year. They book big hotel blocks. They come spend money at our restaurants. They support Black-owned businesses. They go to cultural attractions. It is a major, major driving economic force that really needs to be explored more.
How does Buffalo play into family reunions? Are you seeing Black families from across the country wanting to come to Buffalo?
I mean, absolutely. Every year. There is not a year that goes by that I've lived in this city that I don't hear about a family reunion. It may not be mine. It may not be mine.
Right.
Friends, coworkers, relatives. Every year will pass by where I hear about a family reunion. If it's not happening here, it's happening in another city. Buffalo lost a lot of population back in the day. We have family all over the United States.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's so much new, so much excitement, even down here on Canal side. There's so much going on right now that many haven't seen. And we wanted to say to them, we will support you. Bring them back home.
So it's about selling Buffalo.
Selling who we are, selling the warmth.
Black travelers spend $145 billion on U.S. leisure travel in 2023. That's according to MMGY Travel Intelligence Research. They accounted for 11% of the U.S. leisure travel market. Safety and feeling welcome remain top priorities as deciding factors when selecting destinations. Friends and family recommendations are the #1 driver of travel decisions among Black leisure travelers. And research shows up to 70% of non-business travel among African Americans is related to family reunions.
I know that everyone has a doll story. This year's theme is Through the Eyes of Black Dolls, Our History Will Not Be Erased. Black Barbie has a story. Her story is about being created in 1979 when her white counterpart, original Barbie, was created in 1959. So the story is, what took so long? There are, in fact, many stories to be told by you and through the dolls themselves. I'm wondering, what is your story? Maybe it was a doll that helped you to learn how to braid hair. Maybe it was a doll that you read about, and that doll helped you to become an author. Maybe you had a sibling who cut all of your doll's hair off and you're still mad about it.
I learn a lot every time I come to these community events. And when I went to the doll exhibit a year or two ago, I was blessed to have Lisa walk around with me. And she explained to me, why it's so important. And she talked about how young girls, young Black girls, can see themselves. It gives them the freedom to define themselves as they want to define themselves. But you can only really be free to define yourself if you have ideas of what is open to you. So you're opening young women's minds and ideas of what they could be, and not letting society guide them and tell them what they can't be. And we're going to continue that, write that history, and we're going to continue to recognize black history in Buffalo because Buffalo history is black history. It's been intertwined since day one.
On the last day of Black History Month, Buffalo will host the first annual Sankofa Conference. It's a celebration of Black history in the world.
History not only explains the past, but it also informs the present and helps us shape the future.
Journalist Zina Badawi will be the featured speaker virtually from London. I spoke with her about the message she plans to deliver.
I really support the effort of the Sankofa Conference to try to reinvigorate this idea that everybody of African descent, wherever they are in the world, whether they're on the continent of Africa, in North America, South America, the Caribbean, that they all have a shared history, a common identity. And even today, they actually experience similar situations and prejudices and so on, because that's what really helps unite us. Even people of African descent or Africans themselves, if you say to them, tell me about your history before the arrival of the Europeans, they'll start scratching their heads and they'll think, You say, name me an African king or a queen. They'll say, Tutankhamun. They might say Shaka Zulu. They don't know very much. So it's not so much an erasure, it's an ignorance. And that ignorance extends also to people of African descent. So that's the first task that I think stands before us, is how do we define it? Black history, African history.
The conference will be held February 28th at the Buffalo Academy for the Visual and Performing Arts from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m.
Still to come on Community, we are going to celebrate a legendary Black-owned business.
And a legend on the hardwood at Riverside.
Before we go, we want to pay tribute to one of the strongest and most influential voices of the civil rights movement. The Reverend Jesse Jackson left this world on Monday, February 16th. Jackson rose to fame at the right hand of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but that was just the beginning of his lifetime of service.
Keep hope alive! Keep hope alive!
The Reverend Jesse Jackson was 84 years old.
The legacy of the late Walter Hobson is here on East Gallivan as a trailblazing sign. It's been erected in front of the dry cleaners he founded.
A lot of times with small businesses, where someone in the family passes away, the small business passes away. And it really says something about Mr. Hobson and the Hobson family that this business is still operating, that this business is still serving the community.
And we plan to stay here for many more years to come. We're not going anywhere. We love this community, and we're happy to be a part of it.
They called him the doctor of dry cleaning because when it came to dry cleaning, he could diagnose any problem with your clothes. And they might not have looked so good when they came to him, but when they came from him, they always looked sharp and crisp.
He loved his community. He loved his job. I mean, when he went to work, he was ready.
The Frank Sinatra song, My Way, right? And it's not lost on me that this naming of this street is Walter C. Hobson Way.
Cliff Robinson, NBA great, Buffalo born and raised. He played at UConn, a Portland trailblazer, and he played with other teams too. During his career, he stood out. At 6'10", he was the tallest player to make more than 1,000 three-pointers at that time. But Cliff Robinson was a Riverside High School graduate, a product of the Buffalo Public Schools. And when Brandon Sosner got to Riverside, he wondered,
well, where's his plaque? Where's his statue? Where's his anything? And there wasn't any. So I thought that, he's the greatest athlete to graduate maybe from Buffalo Public Schools, but definitely from Riverside. So then I sort of kind of got it rolling from there, and then just started assembling it piece by piece and grant by grant and donation by donation. And then, I'm online talking to people who saved his trading cards and people who did the Uncle Cliffy Foundation in Portland. So you just kind of start scraping it all together, and every principal that came through helped out a little bit, and then we just kind of got it up on the wall, and just piece by piece. And a kid turned to me and said, "You can go to the NBA from Riverside?" I'm like, "He did," and that was kind of probably the best moment of the whole thing.
A member of the Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame.
He's kind of forgotten. We don't have NBA here, and I feel like there should be a Cliff Robinson Day in Buffalo? Where's Cliff Robinson Street?
Uncle Cliffy. He was also an entrepreneur. Cliff Robinson died in 2020. He was only 53 years old.
And Cliff built such a great career as the sixth man. You know,
Yeah, you're right.
Made a mark and just coming right out of Riverside.
Yeah.
Incredible.
There are a couple of guys, actually 5 guys in Buffalo. They were teenagers and they did not have a good go of it. No. We know them as the Buffalo 5, but here's John Walker's story.
This street, this place, these teens.
We've come to know them as the Buffalo 5. 5 teenagers arrested, most convicted of murder. And as we've heard all too often, they really didn't do it. They've been exonerated. But this is about what happened to them by police and the judicial system.
This is John Walker's story, January 1976.
We were just doing, the regular 16-year-old things. We would go over to the Glenny Drive projects and hang out with each other.
John Walker, Darrell Boyd, Darren Gibson, Floyd Martin, Tyrone Woodruff. They would become known as the Buffalo 5. 62-year-old William Crawford had been at the neighborhood bar across the street from his home on Fillmore Avenue. The next day, he was found dead in his driveway. Police said he died of blows to the head. About a week later, the young men were questioned.
Then 3-4 days later, they came and picked us up again. And this time they was arresting us, charging us with the murder of William Crawford.
Did you know William Crawford?
Never met him, never seen him. If I did, I didn't realize it, but he was an older man. We would never be nowhere where he would be at,
Walker would come to learn more about what happened at the trial.
He was in the Gold Nugget Inn and he was drinking, and he was buying drinks for the other people that were sitting around him. And they seen his money, and they decided that they wanted his money. So once he left the Gold Nugget Inn bar, they went around the back of the house and met him at his back door.
You were 16.
16 years old.
You couldn't get in the Nugget, could you?
At all. You was not getting into the Gold Nugget Inn.
Darren Gibson was arrested, then Darrell Boyd. Walker was next. As for Tyrone Woodruff,
they forced him to saying that we committed the crime. So he was testifying against the other 4 of us.
Woodruff never charged. Gibson got 25 years to life.
He ended up doing 34 years, and then 8 months after he got out, he died of a heart attack.
Boyd, 20 years to life.
And he ended up doing 28 years altogether. They gave me 17 years to life. So I did 22 from the 17, then I did 18 years on lifetime parole.
As for Floyd Martin,
he was the only one out of our situation that got an acquittal. And that meant a lot to us because you're saying all of us did this crime. How only 3 of us in jail?
And when you add up the sentences, it equals the victim's age, 62. Walker fought to clear his name. In 1985, Woodruff recanted his testimony, saying prosecutors forced him to lie on his friends. Coarse testimony and evidence withheld was the basis for Boyd and Walker's post-conviction petition.
Well, the Buffalo Police Department was following interrogation tactics that, whether by design or not, were very, very likely to result in innocent people confessing.
Years later, the charges were dismissed. Both men filed federal civil rights lawsuits against the city of Buffalo, Erie County, and former police detectives seeking damages for their wrongful convictions. Buffalo agreed to settle, paying $4.35 million to Walker and Boyd. Last year, a federal jury awarded Walker $28 million based on his claims against Erie County.
It was because of the district attorney and them withheld evidence.
It turned out there were handwritten notes by the chief prosecutor in which he wrote his own suspicion that the neighbor and the other individual I mentioned may have committed the crime.
Everybody testified that Mr. Crawford was killed after 11:30.
Court documents showed Walker and Boyd were known to be in a cab at 11:28.
John Walker and Tyrone Woodruff were on their way home in a taxi cab before the crime occurred. They could not possibly have been guilty. Tyrone Woodruff, who became the main witness, could not possibly have been telling the truth. And they withheld that. And then we saw police reports indicating that there were 2 other suspects, including a neighbor of the victim, against whom the police had gathered a great deal of evidence and who they initially suspected, and who we later learned even the main prosecutor suspected, and yet they never turned over that evidence to the defense.
I would have never went to jail.
There was no physical or forensics evidence tying the defendants to the murder.
That was the first murder of 1976. It was an elderly white man that got murdered, so they was pressured to kind of like find out what happened there.
And as we now know, they prosecuted the wrong ones. Walker is still waiting for his $28 million award.
Give me what it is the jury awarded me. You've held my life up, you've ruined my life.
I think that there should be an open-mindedness in government to examine the mistakes of the past and to learn from them.
I'm dealing with cancer. I'm dealing with all kinds. I can't walk. I'm dealing with all sorts of things that, I know that I'm not going to be around much longer, but I think that they trying to hold whatever it is that the jury gave me up until I die.
From Ukraine with love.
The story of a teenager who has escaped the war in his home country and found a home here in the Queen City.
We talked about From Ukraine to Buffalo with Love. Pete, you know it also well.
Yeah, UNICEF says 1.7 million kids have been displaced by the war in Ukraine. One of them wound up here in the Queen City with a special opportunity. It's amazing how quickly a life can change.
I thought that I'm going to live my whole life in Kharkiv, in my hometown.
Vanya was born in Kharkiv, about 20 miles from the Russian border. When Russia invaded in 2022, Vanya's life changed drastically.
When the war started, my parents made a decision to protect me.
He initially moved to Germany with his mother, but in the summer of 2024, his life took another turn. Vanya visited a Ukrainian cultural exchange camp in Erie, Pennsylvania. He wound up staying in Erie for the year, and that led to another door of opportunity at Nichols School. Rather than on the front lines, he is now in Buffalo, a freshman at Nichols playing on one of the school's hockey teams.
It is difficult, but we don't have any other options, and we are not the only young family.
In fact, he's not even the only one at Nichols. There's another Ukrainian player, along with two from Romania.
I think it really benefits us all. Like, it opens our eyes to things that we don't get to see, and we get to meet new kids and have kids that come from a completely different background can share their story with us and makes us better people as well.
And while it's a great opportunity for him academically and athletically, it is still very difficult on his family. His family split in 3 different directions. His mother, Ola, is in Germany, and his father, Roma, is still in Ukraine. I spoke with both of them via Zoom through an interpreter.
Obviously, it's very difficult, but at the same time, I'm happy that they're not here because there's no... I would worry more for them to be here than they somewhere else.
As a mother, it must also be comforting to know that even though he's far away in a different country, he is also far away from the unrest in Ukraine.
Absolutely. It's obviously incredibly happy that he's not there during the war. Even when she goes to Ukraine alone, right, to see her husband, it's not the same when Vanya comes during the summer to spend time with them, because now she's worried 3 times more.
One thing that does provide comfort for them is that he is living with a family here in Buffalo. In fact, my brother and sister-in-law.
I have all the admiration in the world for his parents. I cannot imagine sending my kid off to the virtual unknown, but it's...
Trying to maintain normalcy in
yeah.
the most screwed up situation possible.
Yeah.
But in October, Vanya's parents found themselves worrying from a half a world away. Playing a game in Potsdam, he collided with another player, breaking his femur.
So I was more worried how my parents would react on that, like what's happened to me.
He needed emergency surgery, and then he got an unplanned visitor with Ola coming from Germany to help take care of him. As it turned out, he really didn't have to tell her what happened.
She actually was watching the game, so live stream.
And while the reason for the visit was unfortunate, it did put her mind even more at ease.
She's saying me and Steve, they're a perfect family. Mm-hmm. So we lived the same as them before the war.
In the meantime, even while putting on a strong front, Vanya had deeper worries.
I just wanted to walk, you know. I didn't know if I'm gonna at least walk.
And amazingly, less than 4 months later, after weeks of therapy and rehab, he's not only walking, he's back on the ice playing hockey.
I wouldn't change anything except maybe the broken leg.
Yeah.
You know, he has really been such a great addition to the household. I mean, I don't know how he's going to feel about this, but he's family now, like it or not.
He knows it's not ideal, and he'd love to be back at home, living a normal life with Mom and Dad. But for now, as the airstrikes continue in Ukraine, Vanya is at home on the ice and found sanctuary here in the Queen City.
And you're wondering probably how he wound up with my brother and sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Well, a mutual friend in Erie that was part of that cultural program that we talked about, he got him into Nichols and needed a host family, and just needed a host family for a couple of weeks. And my brother and sister-in-law said, hey, we could do that. Well, a couple of weeks turned into several months, and you know, Vanya's part of the family now. So.
Vanya's still here.
Yep.
Well, we need to introduce Vanya to soul music. Right now, you can listen to the sounds of D-Mott.
D-Mott, Buffalo born. He's a songwriter and singer.
And I'll never let you down, because I'll always be around.
His song Higher caught the eye of the Grammys. This song was Grammy considered for Best R&B Performance.
We were considered for the nomination, which takes me to another level as an artist.
D-Mott started performing in 2021. That's when his first single, Angel, was released.
That song hit the top 200, cracked the top 200 like immediately once it started being in rotation.
While his musical journey started with gospel, he ventured into other genres.
I worked with Robbie Taycat. I actually played drums for his a band that he produced called Ghost Runner. Roderick Bonner. He does a lot of production with me.
And what drives you to do it?
There was a call in my heart to write music for humans, to fall in love, to fix broken love, reconciliation.
What's it been like to be in your car and then hear yourself?
I don't like to hear me, but I love to hear me.
Because I'll always be around.
He's also a pastor of the Remnant House Outreach Church, or the Rock Movement.
The platform that has been given to me, I need to be more responsible to show everybody, whether it's African American, Caucasian, Latino, you know, whatever culture. I don't do denomination.
And as his music is peaking with streams in the millions, D-Mott is Buffalo, giving music to the people. Check him out at a summer festival in the Queen City.
What was that like for you?
Everything. I love performing in Buffalo. I love it. It's when you can look out and see your mom and your dad and frenemies and then enemies, but love and see people clapping for you and rocking with you and dancing, and then you get off the stage and then they love you. It's just no better feeling than to perform in Buffalo.
Spoken like a true Buffalonian who has performed at city wineries across the nation and the House of Blues, never giving up on what has become a dream come true.
It was just an honor for me to be considered for this Grammy. And so I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna keep writing music.
And he'll be back on tour this spring.
Listen. Don't try to live without me. I'm your kid.
Black history is American history. Sprinkled in there, we're talking about reunions and a little bit of love from Ukraine.
Yeah, the Queen City rolling out the red carpet for another person in need.
We hope you enjoyed our show. We'll see you next month on commUNITY.
I'll be